Hey, I'm Alex Ratcliffe from Board Game Co., and this is Where Are They Now for October 2021. Basically, looking back at the reviews I did last year in October, covering which games have changed, which games I haven't played, which is the biggest category. Still a lot of prototypes in this category, but which games I have not played since, therefore the review has not changed. Which games haven't changed my opinion of, but I have played them since then, but they're still remaining stable. And then which ones have some degree of change. This does not always mean a rating change. Sometimes it just means anything from nuance or adjustments, or starting to get a little old, or it left my collection even though I think it's wonderful, but anything along those lines that changed. As usual, timestamps down below for the various sections as well as the various games, so you can jump to whatever you want. But also, before we dive into this, random note, last month, I filmed these every single year, for every single month for the last year in review, and I did July, and then I did August, and I did September, but somehow August didn't actually go up. So on the channel, we had July, then September, and then August after September. Just in case you're wondering if it's out of whack, it is, or was out of whack. Hopefully things are back up. In any case, diving into this, starting off the bat with the games I have not played since. This is a very large category. Not a lot of news on these ones. Won't go heavily into detail on them, but these are games which I have not had a chance to play since covering. And starting off the bat, we have Drop Drive. Drop Drive is a newer version of Dungeon Drop, giving a space theme with a degree of pick up and deliver as you wander around the board. A fun, light little game. I enjoyed it, did not love it, gave it a 3 out of 5. Then we have Magical Friends, a game that I did enjoy quite a bit. That one actually had a canceled Kickstarter, and recently had a relaunch Kickstarter. They made some changes, I don't know what the changes were. I played the first version of the game. Magical Friends is basically a racing game with a small world vibe as you pair up different things, trying to figure out the best combination of powers and abilities you can utilize, with a bit of an El Grande scoring mechanism. El Grande, not scoring, initiatives mechanism to try to determine your turn order in the game. Overall, enjoyed it. I thought it could use some cleanup across the board as far as making it either better art or more presentable or something that could really hit, but the game mechanics I thought were really solid, gave it a 3.5 out of 5. Again, these are all games I have not played since. Mythwind. Mythwind is a game that from OOMM Games, or Out of My Mind. OOMM, I think is what it is. But either way, Mythwind is a game which you do not actually have an end goal. You play so that you can play, you build so that you can build, you keep going and going and going. Think games like, I don't know, Animal Crossing or Stardew Valley or stuff like that as far as the gameplay mechanism, just translated to a board game. I did not love it. I felt that and again, prototype, so take this into account, but I felt that I needed more direction in my gameplay and alternatively better things to be building on, and I just didn't feel I had that. I didn't really feel I had a clear reason to keep playing, and so Mythwind is one that I can see the potential promise of it, but for me it's a 2 out of 5, at least currently. Then we have Renature. Renature is a game from Capstone Games, an area control game of basically a domino area control game where you're placing these domino tiles that have animals on both sides. You're matching up the dominoes. You're eventually enclosing areas and building trees. Fun little puzzle. Enjoyed it. Didn't love it. 3.5 out of 5. I did eventually get rid of that one. Well, I got rid of it after reviewing it. Then we had Space Race. Space Race is a game that for me, and this is actually a sad one. This is from a company that unfortunately closed, but Space Race is a game I did not love. Space Race is from, what's the name of the company? Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the name. I'm forgetting the name of the company. They did Project L. They recently had Kingdom Come Deliverance, a Board Cubator. Board Cubator, Space Race, was a game that I unfortunately did not love. The company unfortunately closed as well since then, not by Space Race. But Space Race was one that I thought the mechanisms at play were a little bit too... I didn't feel like there were fun, cool moves. I felt like you're working towards a strategy, and there definitely are ways to optimize, but I felt like there was a lot of do this to get that, do this to get that, without feeling at any point like what I was doing was very cool. For me, it's a 2 out of 5. Then we had Corral. Corral was a Kickstarter from Funtails Games. That was a fun game, overall fun game, not an amazing blow you away kind of game. I enjoyed the puzzle the Corral gave me, while also feeling like it was a solid sequential gateway game, not one that pulled me in enough. A lot of modules to keep things interesting, but overall, even with all the modules mixed in, it was on the lighter side for my personal taste. Gave that one a 3 out of 5. Then we have Taverns and Dragons. Taverns and Dragons from the same creator as a different game who I'm not going to remember, so I'm not going to try. Some piratey sea game, don't remember what it's called, but either way, Taverns and Dragons gave you a bit of a rondel mechanism as you wandered around the board in kind of semi-worker placement, but more rondel worker placement, as you try to figure out how to gather the ingredients you need, hire the people you need to hire, and build up your tableau across a few rounds of play as you figure out how to get the best food for the king and all that stuff. A few other mechanisms going on, fighting dragons, things like that. Again, Taverns and Dragons, you have both of them. I liked it, didn't love it, but I definitely liked it. Gave it a 3.5 out of 5. Then we had Steam Up. Steam Up was, again, a lighter gateway game, a little lighter than my personal taste. It has a degree of just these rotating boards trying to take the food parts you need, while trying to use the various, I can't remember what they're called, but the fortune cards or whatever they're called, to the best effect you could. Like the asymmetrical nature of the characters, it gave you a fun little puzzle there to manage. Overall, a lighter game, a solid gateway game, but lighter and not to my personal taste. That was a 3 out of 5. Solid, just not in love with it. A lot of these games are not in love with. It's the nature of playing a lot of games. You have to figure out the ones that really appeal to you in different ways. And again, these are all the games that didn't stay, which usually means prototype or game that I didn't love, or sometimes both. Then from there that was Steam Up. Then we have Fractal. Fractal Into the Void, or Fractal Beyond the Void, or Fractal Something Void. But Fractal was a 4X based game that was a game that gave you a 4X experience in a relatively shorter playtime, roughly 2 hours. Not short, but not long either. But it was one that gave you a solid degree of exploration, of technology, of all the things you'd expect in a 4X game. I liked it, but it didn't blow me away. It was a 3.5 out of 5. Potential promise for the final game. Like, there are definitely some notes as far as different things that I think could have made the game more accessible or easier to dive into. Things that I think they are taking into account, so we'll see. For me, I think I either want a deeper game that gives me more to do, like Eclipse or Twilight Imperium, or alternatively something that dials it back and gives you more accessibility, like Last Light. Fractal fell into an interesting middle zone, 3.5 out of 5. Then we had Somewhere Under the Rainbow, which is a kids-themed game that was both lighter and also didn't love the theme overall. And to be very clear, I'm a little bit of a prude, and it was a very poop-themed game of collecting unicorn poop, which just didn't personally appeal to my funny bone. But the production was incredibly well done production, but ultimately the gameplay was very light for me and not something that I was personally pulled in by. 2 out of 5 with the recognition that it was not a bad game, it's just not a game I have any interest in. From there we have Rush MD. Rush MD was a game that follows up on Kitchen Rush from the same publisher, from Artipia Games. I believe Artipia Games, if I'm not mistaken. They did Kitchen Rush, and then they did Rush MD. This is a real-time game of flipping timers and trying to desperately save your patients. Very solidly done. Ultimately, real-time games I have found I like, but do not love, and that held true for Rush MD. It was a 3.5 out of 5, a game I thoroughly enjoyed, but also a game I was happy to move on from. Happy sounds a little bit obnoxious. I was fine moving on from. Then we have Pachamama. Pachamama, a game I loved but have not played since, and Pachamama since re-themed or renamed to Tiwanuku. Pachamama was Tiwanuku, let's go with Tiwanuku. Tiwanuku from Sit Down Games was a deduction game of trying to figure out your little puzzle competitively, but felt cooperative as you played. You ended up working with the other players while you played through the game. I really like Tiwanuku quite a bit. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I can even see that growing, but I'm hesitant. I think it might, let's call it a 4 to 5 and stick with it a 4 or 5. Again, I haven't played it since the coverage. Very much looking forward to that Kickstarter delivering. Then we have the Isofarian Guard, another 4 out of 5. Isofarian Guard is another solid one that I had a chance to play briefly after the Kickstarter. I had a chance to play like right before the late pledge closed, so I got into this weird window where it wasn't like prototype coverage, but it wasn't final coverage. It was before late pledge closes coverage. Really liked the Isofarian Guard. I liked it even more when I finally had a chance to play Trudvang Legends, and I found that Trudvang, which was a game I was originally looking forward to more than Isofarian, Trudvang was good, but not great, and Isofarian Guard, I thought, gave me better story than Trudvang, more immersive experience than Trudvang, and better combat mechanisms than Trudvang. So, very excited for the Isofarian Guard, and very optimistic for when that one does deliver. It's going to be a beast of a campaign, a lot of stuff to go through. Table space was my biggest issue, it was a lot on the table, but overall, really enjoyed that one. And then lastly, in the not yet played category, although it is here on the table, just timing wise, is Skyrim. Skyrim is a game I gave a 4 out of 5. I really like Skyrim. Again, similar to Isofarian Guard, similar to Trudvang, it gives you a sequential story-based experience where you're going through a story, you're going through an adventure. It's not meant to be the heaviest experience ever, and it wasn't the heaviest experience. The exploration mechanics were very light. The combat, I didn't like the mechanics there, but the overall experience, I really enjoyed. I could not stop playing it until I finished the experience that they gave me in TTS back when they had this doing the Kickstarter, doing the GameFound campaign. But Skyrim I really liked. I really liked it. I'm optimistic. This one just showed up, and so I have not had a chance to play it since it showed up. It just arrived. I just unboxed it yesterday. But yes, I am looking forward to this one very much when I actually have a chance to play this one. If I was filming this video a month from now, I'd be able to say, hey, I played it, and my opinion has changed or not changed. But right now, I'm just excited to dive into it. A 4 out of 5, and it's finally here. Which brings us to the games, which, again, that was the biggest section in general. And this still reflects the fact that over time, my coverage has moved more and more to cover more and more retail games as opposed to Kickstarter games. But that means for many of these games, they are games that are, many of these are games that I covered and then they left, and others are prototypes, which means I haven't had a chance to properly play them. But moving into the next section, the games I have played, but the review hasn't changed. Not a lot here. We have 4 games. We have Paint the Roses, which is over here. 4 to 5 at the time. Still a 4 to 5. Still same problem I mentioned when I covered it, which is I like it more than my average person in the game group, which means it doesn't get played that much. But I do like it. I do like Paint the Roses a lot. 4 to 5. I enjoy the deduction experience. I like Tiwanuku more, and Tiwanuku arriving might get get rid of Paint the Roses. We'll see. But for right now, still sticking around, still enjoying it. Then I've played Too Many Bones. I've continued to play Too Many Bones. I love that game. Gave it a 5 out of 5. Have not changed in the slightest. Too Many Bones, I adore. One of my favorite games of all time. I love that game and always excited to play it. Then we have Megapulse. Megapulse is actually a prototype, but it's a prototype that I continue to play after the coverage. I gave the one a 4 out of 5. Opinions stay the same on that one, but I have continued to play it. It's one that my brothers, they had the prototype, I believe. I left it with them in Toronto, and they have continued to ask to play it here and there. It's a fun racing game that I've really enjoyed. Looking forward to the final copies of the game arriving. And then we have Marvel Dice Throne, which is over here. Marvel Dice Throne, another one that I've had a chance to continue to play, dive into. Originally, I covered just the 2 characters they had doing the Kickstarter, which was Black Panther and Captain Marvel, but since then this was delivered, and I've continued to dive into Marvel Dice Throne again and again and again, enjoying it very much. It's a 3.5 out of 5. I think Dice Throne in general is a lighter experience to me, but it holds up in terms of the accessibility, the ease of diving into it, the ease of play, the ease of tabling with any number of different people and different, weight classes as far as what they're interested in. I don't love the game, but I really enjoy it, and it's accessible. 3.5, holds up, and still here. Then finally we move into the 3 games where my opinion has in some small way changed. First of all, we have Lords of Ragnarok. This is a technical change, sort of, but Lords of Ragnarok is a game that I gave a 5 out of 5 in my review coverage of it. I then later issued an update because there's a whole lot of people complaining, reasonably so, because I had given them a bunch of complaints about this and this and this and this, and I was like, 5 out of 5. Well, like, that's a whole lot of complaints for a 5 out of 5. Which I think is fair. At the time, I clarified later in a week in review, but I'll clarify here as well because this is the review look back. I gave the review kind of expecting many of these small things would be adjusted, because the big problem I had with Lords of Ragnarok is I was comparing it to Lords of Hellas, which for me was already a 4 out of 5, or 4.5 out of 5, I can't remember. But to me, Lords of Ragnarok, I'd rather play than Lords of Hellas, and I was comparing it to that experience, while acknowledging the fact that as a prototype and as something that still had things to clean up, I'm going to move it down to the 4.5 out of 5 for right now, tentatively. I still expect it to potentially change or go to a 5 out of 5 when I actually play the final version of it, but it was fair that my review was kind of like, I really expect these things to be taken care of, and there's still issues at the time. So there is that caveat there. So kind of an opinion, kind of a review change, not necessarily much of one though. And then we have Resident Evil. For Resident Evil 2 specifically. I didn't play Resident Evil 1. I played Resident Evil... No, I'm doing this wrong. I didn't play Resident Evil 2. I played Resident Evil and then Resident Evil 3. The order is 2, 3, 1 as far as how they came out. But Resident Evil 3 is one that I still very much enjoy. Well, okay, how to give context here. I covered Resident Evil and gave it a 4 out of 5. I like Resident Evil a lot. I since played Resident Evil 3 and really like that one as well. Resident Evil 3 has since left the collection, primarily because I played it like 12 times or something like that, and then eventually decided, you know what, I'd rather continue to play Resident Evil when that one shows up, and so Resident Evil still thoroughly enjoy, still a 4 out of 5, very optimistic for it when it does eventually arrive. And lastly, we have Power Plants, not really a rating change, but one that Power Plants I gave a 3.5 at the time, and it's one that I've continued to play since covering it, and, well, not that much. I played it a few more times after I covered it, and then it had to move on, but I really like Power Plants a lot. And the point that I think my rating of it will go up when it finally does arrive. I did play it since. I'm not yet prepared to say it goes up, but Power Plants is one that is... I have some degrees of complaints around it and some degree of still hesitancy, but overall it was charming, it was easy to table, it gave you quick, fast, punchy area control, and Power Plants, even though it was a 3.5, is one that I do sort of expect to go up. Although I will wait until I actually get my hands on it to talk about that. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. That was Where Are They Now for last October. Again, a whole lot of games that haven't changed. As the series moves on and on, we'll see more changes, I assume, or more just not prototypes leaving the collection every 2 seconds, just because I still do a lot of prototype content, but less so than I did a year ago. In any case, closing up. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.